Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. I am Akhilesh Suman and you are watching Indian Standard Time. I have very eminent guest today, Walter J. Lindner, the Ambassador of Germany to India. Welcome, Ambassador.
Shubdin Akhilesh ji.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Ambassador, we are living in Corona time. Everyone is talking about Corona. Every government is trying to fight against Corona. And there are apprehensions and there are planning also that what will happen after Corona in the whole world. So we will also start talking about Corona and then we will come to another issue. Ambassador, that what is the situation in Germany about Corona?
Yeah, may I just start underlining what you said? Of course, everyone is talking about Corona, and you sit in your home office, I sit in my home office. That's already a challenge. We would not have done this before. So right. I think many aspects in the world are changing through this Corona. Now, right. When you ask me about the situation in Germany, we're doing pretty okay. We are at the status at the moment where we are very carefully lifting restrictions. This is not an easy task to do because you raise hopes with the population. They are already expecting a wind of freedom and of leaving the house. Spring is coming, and if the numbers are developing in a negative way, we have to impose the restrictions again. So I think it's a very untested water situation for India and for Germany and for many other countries where we don't know exactly where this whole thing is going, and we have to be very spontaneous in reacting to it. Maybe after 2-3 days, if we see the numbers are developing in one direction, we have to cut back some of the freedoms, but we are working into the right direction, calibrating now the restrictions to smaller areas to make it possible for the economy to recover. But this is a balance which is not easy.
Right, Ambassador, but if I talk about Germany, that Corona began in China, it went to Italy, and then it went to Iran. And after that, it started touching many countries. So how did it reach Germany? Can you just briefly tell me about the travel of Corona from China to Germany or from Italy to Germany? What was the path?
Well, I'm not an expert in a health officer to see what was the tracing, at what moment, who came into the country and brought the virus. Right. So the patient zero, what you call, I don't know. Of course, it started in China, and then it came earlier to Italy than to Germany. This was lucky for us because we had some more time to prepare ourselves.
Right.
Our numbers are better than many others because we had more time to prepare ourselves. But at some point it was there, and we were ready to impose measures very early on then. But when we imposed them, and already in Italy, the virus has arrived a few weeks before. So for them, it was more tougher, the situation. So again, I don't know who was the person who brought in the virus. This will be difficult to say, but it arrived a few weeks later than it came to Italy.
Yeah, but when it came to Italy, Germany started preparing for fighting the coronavirus?
Yes, they have. Of course, we have very good research institutions like the Robert Koch and the Paul Ehrlich Institution. So they are very much focusing on virus pathways and analysis of this.
All right.
I myself was for Angela Merkel, my chancellor, the commissioner for Ebola.
Right.
For 9 months. So she sent me to all these places, West Africa, and already there, both the WHO and David Navarro and the international research institutions. There were a few in France, a few in the UK and in the US, and then in Germany. They were already working very closely on the Ebola virus, make an analysis for that, see what you can do with quarantine, what's the challenge of a quarantine, what do you have to do if you quarantine people, you have to provide some access for the basic necessities and these things. So there are institutions who were thinking all the time about a new outbreak of a virus. Now it came from China and from that direction. So it's not that they were unprepared, but of course nobody could expect such a dimension, a worldwide shutdown. So this was unprecedented, and so I think yes, they were thinking about this and preparing themselves, but you can't prepare for such a huge outbreak, and I think everyone in the world was surprised.
So you are also adapting the same type of strategy that whole world and especially India is adopting, like lockdown, not allowing people to mix, keeping social distance. These are the strategies also in Germany.
Yeah, I think there were two ways to think about this. One, of course, was to say, well, there is no way to limit this spread. You have to have an outbreak in huge parts of the population, so that the big part of the population, like a herd, gets immune through this.
Right.
I think all those in the world who were thinking to follow this changed sooner or later to, I think, the one and only approach to this, or the most successful, I guess, which is isolating or finding out who is, well, testing, and through tests finding out who has the virus, and then to see how you trace the contact persons, isolate the person, find the contact persons, and that's the beginning. And this is very painful in all the countries.
Right.
And it lasts for, as you see in India now, 7 weeks. In Germany it was 6, 7 weeks. In Italy it was 9 weeks, 11 weeks. So
Right.
I'm not an expert to say how many weeks this will be. It depends on the country, and it depends on the intensity of the virus. But the better you control the spread, the lower the rise of the numbers.
Right.
And rise of the numbers, you have, of course, then a challenge for your health system, for your intensive care hospitals. If they rise very high and very sharp and very, very fast, then the hospitals will be overburdened, and then you have a problem. So that's why everyone in the world tries to slow down this process and to reach the numbers, the higher numbers, in a slowed down way. This is, I guess, the way you have to do it, and you have to do it until a vaccine is out there. Before that,
so as you told about vaccine, what I have heard that US and Germany are trying on vaccines, and is there any cooperation going on between US and Germany, and are you in a situation where your country can find a vaccine now?
we have pretty good biochemical industry in the country, and they are very, very well on track. But there are, I wouldn't say they're the only ones in the world who do this. There are others in many parts of the country, of the world. I think this would be a moment for international cooperation of finding a vaccine, because it's not something one nation will find and use for its nation. It's for the good of the rest of the world. That's why the Chancellor and European Commission the other day had a telephone conference where they were asking for extra money. You know that Bill Gates already has put some money on the table, but it's not enough. We have to invest quite a lot of money to find internationally this vaccine. And if the Germans can be helpful there, I think some companies are already pretty far advanced, but so are also Israelis and the US and from France. So there are some others, but it's not a race who will be the first.
Right.
It's a race for the human mankind to find this, and then it has to be a vaccine for everyone in the world. This should be not the ownership of one country or the other country. We commonly find this vaccine, and then we use it for everyone in the world.
So China is the country from where people say that it is the country from where coronavirus is spread all over the world. So is there any cooperation with China also going on in finding out the vaccine or not?
I think there's cooperation with every country in the world.
Right.
Chinese scientists are very good, so there are, of course, also cooperation with the Chinese. But as there are with the Indians, of course, and even with the Russians and with others. So I think, as I said again, the virus has showed us that borders and ideological differences and whatever you may have out there should not be on the forefront. It's now the race of the best brains. They should, the most capable, skillful researchers, they should, and they are working day and night to find this. Whether this is now in the end a cooperation between 5 countries, including, let's say, as you asked, China, or including Russia, or including Israel, doesn't matter. Those who are most advanced should be now there in the forefront, and I'm sure this will happen because a really world-class researcher doesn't have a skin color and doesn't have a passport. He has a mind of a researcher and of the world-class researcher, and he should use it.
So can I ask you that till what stage we are in finding the vaccine, whether we are reaching near the result or we are still groping in the dark?
Well, as I said, I used to be very close during the Ebola times.
Right.
Now, you would have to ask someone who is really involved in the latest research state of this. I hear that they are making good headway and that they are testing already human tests. But of course, until you reach a vaccine, it takes some time because you have animal testing, then you have human testing, then you have the mass production, and then and all this. And this can take from a few months to 2 years. If you ask, I guess some experts will say it takes 2 years. Others will be more optimistic and say a few months. Let's be optimistic, but I can't guarantee it.
Excellency, you are one of the senior most diplomats existing in the world. If some vaccine is really found out, then what will be the mechanism of its distribution? Like, that suppose Germany and US finds out of the vaccine, then how it will be distributed all over the world?
Well, you see, as a diplomat, you never answer questions. What if? There's a hypothetical questions. I'm saying, I guess voters everywhere in the world will see how their leaders in their countries are acting and behaving in the crisis. If they see they are using it just for national purposes, I think nobody would be happy. It is something which touches us all, because whether you're in a rich or in a poor country, in the north, in the south, east or west, in a globalized world, you depend from each other, as we have now painfully also seen in all the global, the stop of global supply chains. So we all jobs, our health, our peace is depending from each other. So that's why a pandemic, which is a security threat also, is something which affects us all. That's why I think short-sighted, just national interest will not help anyone.
You said that it is also a security threat, and many people are very disappointed the way United Nations Security Council virtually abandoned this whole threat from the COVID-19. So don't you think that this is an opportune time that also UN system should be reformed in a way that also shows the concern of the genuine people of the world, not just a structure that was made after Second World War?
Your question is already the answer. Yes, and I'm disappointed too, because we already at the time when Ebola was there, we tried, and many countries tried to consider the outbreak, a pandemic, as a threat to international security.
Right.
Now we're sitting in the Security Council as non-permanent member, and we have really fought hard for including this also on the agenda. Now there has been the Secretary General of the United Nations, Gutierrez, who 6 weeks ago has asked the international community to declare a world truce, stop of any wars during this crisis.
Right.
Said this night, and we wanted to put this into a resolution, and a few days ago it was voted negatively on it. So we were very disappointed, because I think if the Security Council in such a global threat is not capable of finding a common voice, then many people around the globe will be disappointed, and the legitimacy of the Security Council is at stake. Because people say, why do we have a Security Council if he is not acting and reacting? So I think it is a huge wake-up call also for the Security Council reform and for the reform of the UN system. We have to make the Security Council make a more representative body and a more efficient body. Otherwise, it will lose more and more credibility, and then that's for the negative. That's negative for the whole world. We need a body in such a situation. We need a body to turn to. If it's not the Security Council, where do we go to?
Right. That is the question. That because Security Council itself is so complicated, and even system is so complicated that unless every Security Council permanent member comes on board, there can be no change, no reform. So don't you think that this rigidity of Security Council also should be questioned by the normal common members of the United Nations?
Yeah, you see, India is together with Germany and Japan and Brazil in a group which is since 25 years trying to reform the UN Security Council. Both membership of the Security Council make it more representative, include Africans, include India, include Latin Americans, and all these countries who were not there in 1945. 1945, there were 70 countries in the world, and now we have 92, and none of them is represented. So both reform of the membership or reform in the working methods. We think we have quite some support, but of course you need a non-veto of the 5 permanent members, and then you need a resolution, and then you see whether some insist that there should be a consensus. We say it doesn't have to be a consensus, it has to be the vast majority of the UN who has to vote for reform. But with this, we are in very close contact with the G4, as we call them, including with India, to see what we can do, how we move forward. India will hopefully be a non-permanent member by next year on, and they will continue fighting for it, and we do as well. Whether we are in the Security Council or outside, we are really pushing this. I think time is running out. We lose all the credibility of the UN system if we don't change it.
So don't you think that the whole veto system should be abolished and things should be decided on the basis of majority minority, not on will and wish of one country that can block everything in the world?
Well, you see, one thing is what you wish and what you think it's possible, and the other thing is what's reality. I don't think those members of the Security Council, permanent members who have a veto power, will give it up. So we can have wonderful ideas, but if it's not realistic, then it's not realistic. So that's why we had always had a realistic approach and see, okay, how can we get the first step to change the membership, and then we talk about the veto, and then we talk about the procedures and all this. But this is a very complicated discussion done in New York. I have met your permanent representative several times when I was Foreign Secretary, and we are very much on the same wavelength there. And I remember that one of your permanent secretaries, permanent representatives in India 2 years ago, when you were in the Security Council as non-member, he said, you know what, it's the end of the year and this is the end of our 2 years term. I'm not leaving. I stay in the Security Council, carried out of the Security Council. It was a nice, funny idea, but it is, a representative of 1.4 billion people not being in the Security Council. It's just not acceptable.
Right. So WHO, the World Health Organization, is another organization that is also in the news nowadays. And there are complaints of many of the countries that WHO did not guide properly. In the beginning, it said that there is no human-to-human transfer of the virus. Then again, it said that there is no need of travel ban. But after all, it was felt that all these measures were necessary. So I think the WHO is also in question. So what will you do with WHO? What type of change WHO requires so that it can become more credible and more transparent?
You see, no institution is perfect.
Right.
The WHO already had its shortcomings during the Ebola crisis. And one of the results of the Ebola crisis, lessons learned, was to reform the WHO in Geneva, but also in the country representations, because they always have a country representative. So there was a whole discussion on the system and on reforms, and the WHO did quite some reforms. Now, also in this crisis, no organization is perfect, and neither was the WHO. But if one criticizes it, I think one should do it in a constructive way. It is a wonderful organization, WHO. We support it, and we always have supported it. And without them, it's not that they only do corona, they do all the diseases around the globe. Without them, it's just, this world would be a much less positive world. So we need the WHO. If we have some discussion necessary, we think some discussions on further reforms or on lessons learned from this crisis, we should do it. And we should do it, with clear words among friends in Geneva. And this is where the critics should bring in their points. We support it, and you have quite a few brilliant people. One is, I want to mention David Navarro, who is one of the WHO special representatives. He did an interview a few days ago in India media, where he was praising the path so far of which India has taken. We work together as Ebola specialists, and brilliant person. Without him, the Ebola crisis would not have been brought under control that fast. So I'm sure, the WHO has not only him, but others as well. You have brilliant experts. Of course, they need the cooperation with other people. And if there is something to criticize, which might maybe be the case in the beginning, in the few first weeks, we will do this. And we will do this together with our friends, but not by ignoring it.
So you mean to say that if WHO was at fault in some point of time during this coronavirus crisis, it might be individuals, but not WHO as an organization can be faulted. That is what you mean?
I wouldn't go that far, because this has to be discussed then in the WHO.
Right.
So if they think that the first few weeks they were reacting too slow or not fast enough, whatever, this should be discussed by the members of the WHO, which are all represented in Geneva, and they should then discuss it there. Whether this is, if there's some shortcoming, if the shortcoming is then a personal issue or something inborn with the organization, because it's per se a bit slow, whatever, then we have to speed it up, these organizational hiccups. If that's necessary, this crisis is always used, should use as a lessons learned to make it better for the next crisis. There will be another one,
Right.
and then we will see, okay, what did we learn from the last one? And I think this is the best approach to do that.
So how was the cooperation between India and Germany in this time, Excellency?
They are very good on very different ways. First, of course, our leaders were talking on the phone and exchanging their experiences, Prime Minister Modi and Angela Merkel. Then the Indian side, especially the Ministry of External Affairs, was very helpful in helping us getting our German stranded tourists from India back to Germany. We needed a lot of cooperation because it was in curfew situations, lockdown situations, seal-off situations where the borders to other states were shut. So we needed really some really good.
Right.
And we had it, chief of protocol and others. They were just excellent. So this was very helpful. And then on the cooperation of exporting medicine or contributions to medicine, we were also, India did honor all its obligations. So we were really happy about that. Even now, I guess, it's important to have close contact. You see, as I mentioned before, we are not in same stages right now of the crisis, because we have already seen our peak, hopefully. India very likely has not yet seen the peak. It's still on the rise. You still have 11 days, I guess, for the doubling of your rate. We have 120 days for the doubling. So we are beyond the worst, I guess. But still, as I said, it's unmarked territory. How do you, after let's say after 6-7 weeks of a lockdown, you have to think of some easing of the situation for the economy and for the people. People have to get out, especially in a country like India, I guess, where you have migrant workers and people who earn their meager salary and for a day or two, and if they don't have income, then what should they do? So you need some kind of opening, but the opening can, of course, it's the balance between the health of the public and the economic recovery. It doesn't help if you die of hunger. You survive Corona, but you die of hunger. So you have to strike this balance, and this is easier said than done. And it's of course different from a country like Germany, where you have an excellent health service and where we don't have rickshaw pullers, let's say, who earn their money a day and then next day they have nothing. And India, for example. But I think in comparison to the challenges which India has, poverty, infrastructure, the huge country, and I think they're doing very well. So has also said David Navarro from WHO, because the numbers are, it's more than 60,000, it's true, but the increase is already at 11 days only.
Right.
It's good if it comes to 20 days, 25 days, whatever. So we all had expected much higher numbers in India.
Right.
And they are not there, so which is showing that the tight measures which the government, as well as the German government, implemented were helpful. Now we are at a stage, as I said, where we have to calibrate these measures. Now you can't go from a lockdown to an opening, so you have to make it step by step, baby steps. You have seen, maybe we have opened in Germany now some kind of restaurants, some kind of restaurants which have to keep sentences, of course, but a certain number of people in the restaurants. In the shops, only a certain numbers. Football stadiums, but without people who watch. They're playing among themselves, and then we have the camera. Now, this is as I said, it's an opening which is important, but this opening is always has to be controlled. If there are increases, immediately you have to move back. And I guess that's the same thing, but the Prime Minister and his ministerial colleagues will do now to see how they can make sure that the opening is happening, but it's not threatening the achievements so far, which means red zones and sealed off zones, and then reacting in different states to different situations. I think that's a complicated issue, and nobody has really the wisdom to tell others that's how you do it. That's why it's difficult.
Okay, my last question, Excellency, very briefly, that in Corona time we are not meeting personally. Physical distance is very important. So how do you see the future of diplomacy in coming days?
You know what? I know that everyone is now praising the technology, and this video conference is excellent. But I tell you what, I can't wait for the moment that this is over, because as much as I like to see you on the screen here, it's different than when I have Akhilesh here sitting with me in the garden, because it's more than just seeing you there. It's the interaction and it's the chemistry. Now, it would be a very poor world if we would do most of our conversations through these video conferences. I hope very much that we come back to a moment where we sit together and can interact, have this human touch, human chemistry. This is what we are made for, the human mankind, and not for being on a screen. So I know maybe the techno freaks will say, no, this is the future. I hope the future includes a lot of human touches.
Thank you so much, Excellency. And we should expect that human touch is very necessary in coming days, and we will get rid of coronavirus. Thank you so much, Excellency, for talking to Rajya Sabha Television.
Wir melden Akhilesh.
Thank you so much.